The Buster Blader Archetype. Buster Blader was born in the magical citadel of Enmyon. Over time, he would be hailed as a mighty swordsman who had dedicated his life to the extermination of all dragons that would threaten his land. In recognition of his proficiency in dragon slaying, he was awarded the emblem of the Dragon Destroyer by his people. Things would remain peaceful, and the dragons would remain at bay. That is, until one fateful day, when the Calamity Dragon of Sin appeared at the city's borders. With but a mere flap of its huge wings, chunks of the city would be destroyed, its ruins lit up in a blaze. Though dragons had attacked the city before, this monster's eyes were glazed over with a look of pure animalistic savagery. It was as if it wasn't even in control of its own actions. Regardless, the Buster Blader appeared from the flames, ready to fight the ensuing threat. During the battle, he would notice a small dragon at the great beast's feet. It was trembling in fear at its own mother's blind rampage. As a dragon slayer, seeing a small dragon about to be crushed by its own kind, well, it should have meant absolutely nothing to him. However, against his better judgment, as the gigantic dragon's foot was about to come down and crush the small dragon, the swordsman instinctively grabbed it from harm's way, and with one gigantic slash of his blade, he would slay the cataclysmic dragon. Following this event, the small dragon would follow the Buster Blader wherever he would go. Though not particularly useful in battle at first, over time it would be clear that the creature had the unique ability to absorb the essence of fallen foes and fuse their remains into inanimate objects to create unique weapons. With each battle, the small dragon would become more and more powerful, now being capable of aiding the swordsman in fights. However, with each foe slain, there was also a darkness growing inside of the dragon. This would all accumulate after the defeat of a gigantic great dragon. The whelp immediately absorbed its power to gain new strength, but this proved to be the tipping point. The dragon's eyes began to glaze over, the whelp's feathers had begun to shed, and in its place, a cataclysmic dragon stood. It was almost a mirror image of its rampaging mother from all those years ago. In a blind fury, it flew into the Enmyon city and destroyed countless homes and people. Buster Blader unfortunately was forced to fight his friend, and with a heavy heart and no other options, he ended his former companion's life. As the Blader rested his hand upon the motionless dragon in mourning, the Buster Dragon began to envelop itself around the swordsman. With its final breath, after regaining a portion of its sanity, it had begun to fuse its very self with the swordsman's armor and sword. With this fusion, a message was imbued. The whelp hoped that whenever the Buster Blader would draw his sword, his companion would always be there by his side. From the rubble, the swordsman would rise with his new armor. He would be dubbed Buster Blader, the Dragon Destroyer Swordsman. First released way back in the 2002 set, Pharaoh's Serpent, we would not actually see the support archetype, Destruction Sword, until it made its debut in the 2015 set, Breakers of Shadow. Prior to all of this, Buster Blader would make its anime debut during the Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters episode where Yugi duels against strings. Fun fact, it's alluded that Yugi actually went out of his way to pull this card in a booster pack. But the question then becomes, why? Why did he want the Buster Blader so much? Well, that's an easy question to answer. If your destined arch rival, a man who is obsessed with dragons, has a dragon-themed jet, has a girlfriend in a past life that got turned into a dragon, and, of course, plays a deck focused around the Blue Eyes White Dragon, then I think you too would do the same and invest in a card that is, let's just call it what it is, an anti-Kyber card. And the reason that this card is an anti-Kyber card is because the Buster Blader has the effect that it gains 500 attack for each dragon monster the opponent controls or has in their graveyard. Despite the purpose of this card, Buster Blader wouldn't get that many opportunities in duels against Kaiba. Though it would make an appearance in Yugi and Kaiba's clash in the Colosseum duel, unfortunately, Buster Blader never actually got to shine, as after Yugi got it to the field, he immediately fused it with his Dark Magician to summon his Dark Paladin. Which, to be fair, the Dark Paladin is just an upgraded version of it, so it's fine. But that brings up an interesting point as well. Buster Blader, you see, is essentially a warrior version of Dark Magician, and Dark Magician is a spellcaster version of the Buster Blader. Due to this fact, the two share some support cards of each other. For example, the skilled White Magician works with Buster Blader, while the skilled Black Magician works with Dark Magician. There's some other color-coded magicians that work with some other iconic monsters, but other than that, both the Dark Magician and Buster Blader can be summoned with a card called Miracle Restoring. And both, as we mentioned, can be fused together to make the Dark Paladin, which basically is a monster who represents a fusion of magic and physical might together. In fact, as one of the most popular legacy cards in Yu-Gi-Oh!, this monster was given an alternative artwork, which was designed by Kazuki Takahashi himself for the anniversary pack. And after a whole decade passes, we would finally get a modern retrain of this card, known as Buster Blader, the Destruction Sword Master. Its effect makes it so that this card's name becomes Buster Blader while on the field or in the grave. If a monster or monsters your opponent controls is destroyed by battle or card effect and sent to the graveyard, you can target one of those destroyed monsters, equip it to this card. Once per turn, you can send one monster card you control that is equipped to this card to the graveyard, destroy all monsters your opponent controls with the same type as that monster sent to the grave. Now, this monster is what we see at the start of the story. If we fast forward all the way to the end, after it fuses with his dragon companion, this monster becomes the fusion form Buster Blader, the Dragon Destroyer Swordsman. To summon this, just like the lore, it requires a Buster Blader and one dragon monster. Its effect forces it to be unable to attack directly. However, it gains 1000 attack and defense for each dragon monster the opponent controls or in their grave. Change all dragon monsters the opponent controls to defense position. Also, dragon monsters in your opponent's possession cannot activate their effects. If this card attacks a defense position monster, inflict piercing battle damage. Obviously, based on this effect, you can see that this monster excels against dragon decks. But you can't guarantee you're going to play a dragon tech all the time. There's only one Kaiba out there after all. So how can we get around this little factor? Well, we'll use its corrupted companion, the synchro monster, Buster Dragon. Known in the Japanese as Sinful Savage Dragon, Buster Dragon. This monster requires one tuner and one non-tuner monster. Its effect makes it so that all monsters the opponent controls become dragons. Yes, with this monster on the field at the same time as Buster Blader, all the opponent's monsters become dragons, they all switch into defense, which means that none of them can use their effects or declare an attack. The rest of Buster Dragon's effect is, once per turn, if you do not control a Buster Blader monster, you can target one Buster Blader in your graveyard, special summon it. Once per opponent's turn, quick effect, you can target one Buster Blader monster you control, equip it with Destruction Sword monster from your graveyard. Destruction Sword, eh? Well, to support the Buster Bladers, we actually have the Destruction Sword monsters. These monsters have the ability to be equipped from the hand or from the side of the field to a Buster Blader monster to bestow some sort of beneficial effect to it, which mostly consists of restricting the opponent from doing something. All of the cards depict Buster Whelp as it slowly becomes more and more powerful. We see this escalation not only in the artworks, but through the monster's level and attack, as by every level that this monster gets increased by, its attack increases by 400. And for the record, I just want to say this, it would make sense in the future that there would be a level 2, a level 5, a level 6, and a level 7 form of the Buster Whelps, because the Buster Dragon is a level 8, and the Buster Whelp seems to be slowly increasing in level, building up to the Buster Dragon. So I think, personally, we could receive these someday in the future. Now, in terms of these monsters, we have Buster Whelp of the Destruction Swordsman. Its effect is, when this card is normal summoned, you can add one Destruction Sword card from your deck to your hand, except Buster Whelp of the Destruction Swordsman. You can tribute this card to special summon one Buster Blader from your hand or graveyard, or if this card is in your graveyard and you control Buster Blader, you can discard one Destruction Sword card, special summon this card. After its first absorption and imbuing the power of a soul into a weapon, we get Dragon Buster Destruction Sword. Its effect is that you can target one Buster Blader you control, equip this card from your hand or field to that target. While this card is equipped to a monster, your opponent cannot special summon monsters from the extra deck. While this card is equipped to a monster, you can special summon this card. This monster is considered the most powerful of the Destruction Sword forms, as it denies your opponent from using any of their cards in the extra deck. After absorbing 2 more souls, we get Wizard Buster Destruction Sword. Its effect is that you can target a Buster Blader you control, equip this monster from your hand or your side of the field to the target. While this card is equipped to a monster, monsters in your opponent's graveyard cannot activate their effects. You can send this equipped card to the graveyard to target 1 Destruction Sword monster in your graveyard, add it to your hand. This card is also a decent monster in the modern metagame, as things like Tearlaments, who like to fuse in the graveyard, well, not under Wizard Buster. After absorbing another Dragonic Soul, we get Robot Buster Destruction Sword. Its effect is you can target 1 Buster Blader you control, equip this monster from your hand or field to your side of the field to that target. While this card is equipped to a monster, spell and trap cards that are already face up on your opponent's side of the field cannot activate their effects. You send this equipped card to the graveyard, and the monster that was equipped with this card gains 1000 attack until the end of the turn. We have one final monster of the archetype, this time being the spiritual form of this monster, after it has passed on at the end of the story. This card is the only link monster of the archetype, and it's Protector Whelp of the Destruction Swordsman. It requires 2 monsters to be summoned. Its effect is, if this card is link summoned, you can send 1 Destruction Sword card from your deck to the graveyard. Then you can special summon 1 Buster Blader monster from your hand. At the end of your battle phase, if your opponent controls no monsters, you can target 1 Buster Blader monster you control that did not declare an attack this turn, inflict damage to your opponent equal to that monster's attack. In terms of the spells and traps of this archetype, we have Emblem of Dragon Destroyer, known in the Japanese as Proof of Dragon Destruction. This card lets you add a Buster Blader from your deck or grave straight to your hand. We have Karma of the Destruction Swordsman, which lets you target up to 3 monsters of the same type in the opponent's graveyard, banish them, and if you do, 1 Buster Blader monster or 1 Destruction Sword monster you control gains 500 attack and defense for each of those banished monsters until the end of the turn. If this card is in your graveyard, you discard 1 Destruction Sword card, add this card to your hand. We have Destruction Swordsman Fusion, which lets you fusion summon 1 fusion monster that lists Buster Blader as material from your extra deck using monsters from your hand or field as fusion material. And if this card is in the grave, you can send 1 card from your hand to the graveyard to add this card to your hand. Starting with one of the most powerful traps, Prologue of the Destruction Swordsman. This card lets you send 1 Destruction Sword card and 1 Buster Blader monster from your deck to the grave. It then lets you special summon 1 Buster Dragon from your extra deck or graveyard. However, it is destroyed during the end phase of the next turn. You can banish this card from your graveyard. This turn, Destruction Sword cards you control cannot be destroyed by battle or card effects. What makes this card so powerful is that it's a 1-card starter. Basically, you activate this trap, you send Destruction Sword of Memories from your deck to the grave, activate the Destruction Sword of Memories in your graveyard, which will let you fuse immediately from the graveyard. Basically, this whole combo lets you get out a Buster Dragon and the Fusion Buster Dragon straight to the field. Speaking of, by the way, Destruction Sword of Memories, its effect is that you can discard 1 Destruction Sword card to special summon a Buster Blader monster from your deck. You can banish this card from your graveyard, fusion summon 1 Buster Blader, the Dragon Destroyer Swordsman from your extra deck by banishing fusion materials listed on it from the grave. The final trap of this archetype is a reference to this monster's attack name in the anime, and that is Destruction Sword Flash. Its effect allows you, if you control a fusion monster that lists Buster Blader as material, to banish all monsters your opponent controls. When a card or effect is activated that targets a Buster Blader monster you control, you can banish this card from your graveyard to negate that effect, and if you do, destroy that card. And with that, that's the Buster Blader archetype done. Want to see me try and get a Buster Blader deck into Master Rank on Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel? Well, I'll leave a link right here for you to check it out. Other than that though, thank you for watching. Catch you later.